Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez with you here. It is we're recording this Wednesday, August the 11th. Kind of a light show, Eric. Feels like the calm before the storm, doesn't it?
I hope that's not the case, because we do have a storm in the system that's coming nearby here by the end of the weekend.
Not gonna do much. It's just a tropical storm. Calm
hey,
down.
Eric Burris is following it hour by hour, minute by minute.
Job.
Baby.
That's his job. That's what Eric Burris is paid handsomely to do.
Hopefully, you can find better gigs than that. But okay.
Hey, listen. Weather's always a story here in Central Florida. I'm not worried about this the tropical depression now. That's getting ready to skirt up the western coast of Florida. Please stay safe, everybody, especially if you're out there on the water. But we have a bunch of little things to talk about, and then we actually have our very first season preview interview with Tiffany Roberts Sahaydak today on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast, as her team has already taken the field in a game against another team. They played FAU on Sunday in a game that was in an exhibition game, that was shortened by weather. They cut it off at half. There's lightning in the area, which you can do with exhibition. So we talked with Tiff about her team coming in. It struggled a bit last year, but she sounded pretty optimistic about this year. But we start with just a couple of notes on video on the football team. As they are getting ready to, as they're in camp right now. Gus Malzahn has won over the fan base with that hat he wore today. Eric, did you see that at the press conference?
Was that a tribute to Bobby Bowden? Because I don't know if anybody.
Question. I don't know. He didn't mention that it was, but
probably nobody asked him. Because Bobby Bowden wore that hat very similarly towards the end of his career.
Yeah, he was the first football coach I can remember wearing a straw hat like that.
Yeah, so I just wondered if anybody, because that was the thing that jumped out at me. There, it might have been coincidental, because he did pay tribute to Bobby Bowden on social media when obviously the passing of him as well. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of wondered if anybody wondered about that. But yeah, I mean, look, the camps are going on. The thing that has struck me from the practices is that the players pretty much keep talking about how this staff is attention to detail, that they've put these players in, defensively in positions to succeed, pretty much openly saying how they've learned some techniques that they didn't learn from previous staffs. I think that's a positive from a teaching standpoint with this staff, is the players have bought in. And that could be the difference maybe to attain, hopefully, for some of the maybe flaws that this roster may or may not have.
You said a key word there, teaching. And I think Scott Frost didn't get enough credit for how good of a teacher he was as a coach. I don't think that Josh Heupel kind of understood what that really meant, whether or not he learns it, but he's learned it now, or by the time he gets to Tennessee is an open question. But we know who Gus Malzahn is. He's a former high school coach, and he was a former teacher, and he knows how to apply those techniques to the game. And I think that's, it's fun to hear the players discuss, how they're viewing the game in a different light in that respect. And that's the kind of coach that breeds coaches. We talk about all the time how one of your jobs as head coach is to coach the coaches. I think he's been doing that, and we've seen that with the staff he's assembled. he's assembled his staff with an eye on turning those guys into head coaches and developing a pipeline. And I think we're going to start seeing that with a lot of the players too. We're going to see, I think, a number of players that who maybe in the future, if they don't go to the NFL, they may decide to go into coaching, in part because they're exposed to the game in this kind of way. I know it's a really philosophical way of talking about it, but that's the part about Gus Malzahn that I find to be really exciting with him here at UCF. Of course, I'm a teacher by trade, so
right.
Naturally, I think that's
right. But no, I mean, I agree. I think he's mentioned that he's a teacher by trade, and it's interesting because he did talk a lot about Bobby Bowden in his media availability. Talked about obviously the belief in his faith, that he got that from Coach Bowden and Tom Osborne were people he looked up to. He even heard about the story that somebody asked him the question about in the 1980s when UCF football had been in some financial struggles, that Bobby Bowden donated Florida State's leftover equipment to UCF. Yep. And Gus's quote was, quote, "I heard it this week for the first time. That doesn't surprise me. You could tell the older people who have been around here, the respect they have for him and the appreciation they have because of that." I don't think a lot of people realize that Bobby Bowden really, in a lot of indirect ways, has a big influence on UCF football.
Oh, huge influence. Yeah.
Gene McDowell, obviously longtime head coach of UCF, was an assistant under Bobby Bowden. And I think that's a story that I don't think gets a lot of reps. I always felt like UCF had a lot of similarities to try to pattern themselves to what Florida State was kind of doing with Bobby Bowden. So that even though Bobby Bowden, Florida State coach, really has had an impact on a lot of sports. So I thought that was interesting. Gus going in depth on that. Travis Williams, the defense coordinator, talked about Bobby Bowden. But I think these guys are pleased with how practice has gone. And, we'll just have to see. I think they're a few weeks away from the season starting. And the season's close when we got polls coming out, baby.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got that. We do have that first coaches poll. The coaches poll always comes out first. And excellent segue, Eric. I have to give you credit on that one. But and we'll talk about some more of this, some more polls in other sports in a little bit with Tiffany Roberts Sahaydak, because her women's soccer poll came out. But here's the deal with the USA Today AFCA coaches poll. Top 5. I mean, this is pretty much like, your early favorites for the CFP, right? Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Georgia. Some combination of that 5, I'm guessing, is what everyone thinks. A&M, Notre Dame, Iowa State, North Carolina, Cincinnati rounds out the top 10. They are the highest ranked non-A5 team. Florida's ranked 11th. Let's see, Miami's 16th. Some other highlights. Louisiana, 23rd. Carolina, 24th. As far as other teams in the American, excuse me, UCF received 29 votes. They're the second highest team in the out of the American in terms of total votes. Boise State, UCF's opening night opponent, was 2 spots behind them with 27 votes. Other American Athletic Conference teams receiving votes: Tulsa, followed by Houston and SMU. Interesting that they put Tulsa that high, Eric. But for me, the standout moment was, or the standout, this was Cincinnati being ranked 10th. Really high, I thought. That's much higher than I thought they would get. And just to put that in perspective, Cincinnati lost their bowl game last year. And finished with 1 loss. UCF, when they went undefeated, granted they had a changeover at head coach, but started the following season 23rd and then won 12 games in a row. Cincinnati has the kind of head start that UCF was hoping for or have in 2018. No.
Yeah. Well, I think that's accurate, but part of that is, look, they do have their head coach back, Luke Fickell. You mentioned Scott Frost wasn't back in 2018. That was the big question with UCF. Here at Cincinnati, they've got the head coach back. They've got their quarterback back. They've got a lot of players back. So obviously they speak very highly. And look, yeah, let's be real about it. They like Cincinnati a lot more because Cincinnati didn't piss off everybody and annoy people in 2017 with some claims. So, yeah, guess what? You get rewarded for that, I guess, in this sport.
I don't think that had anything to do with it. I think it had a lot to do with the fact that Luke Fickell is back and Scott Frost wasn't. But I also think that there's also 4 years of institutional memory And the coaches around the country recognize, oh, you know what, this American Athletic Conference is actually pretty good. They're much better than we thought they were 4 years ago. I think that's another part of it.
Yeah, but I also think the jury's out on Cincinnati. Like, I think now it's to the point where are we overrating Cincinnati? Because, again, everything kind of from a scheduling standpoint, it turned out to be pretty easy for them last year. Like, their toughest games were at SMU, who faded at the end of the year, at UCF, who obviously had their struggles. We're going to find out about Cincinnati this year. They're at Indiana. They're at Notre Dame. I think this is the blue case scenario. If they win those 2 games, they're going to be a playoff contender. If they don't, then people are going to say, well, see, they weren't that great. So,
by the way, Indiana is 17th in the preseason.
Yeah, that's a big game.
Notre Dame is 7th.
That's a huge game. This is it right here. Like I've said this in years.
Not your dad's Indiana.
No, and I think that's when I've said about, can a team from the American make the playoff? I've said yes, they can. I thought Houston in 2016 would have made the playoff had they taken care of business in the American because they beat Oklahoma and Reliant. They beat Louisville and Lamar Jackson, winning the Heisman. UCF never had that in 20. They didn't have that marquee non-conference games, and we'll see what happens, but it's a long ways to go. And as our old friend, our old co-host used to say, who had a Hatter hat on when he would come on the show, would say, and I'll paraphrase it how he would say it, would be, these polls mean nothing.
They mean nothing. You're right. I mean, we like to joke that the coaches poll is really the SID poll, right?
Probably in some cases it probably is.
Now
I will point out, by the way, Gus Malzahn is a voter in this.
Correct. Poll. I was just going to say that Gus Malzahn is a voter in the USA Today coaches poll. So is Philip Montgomery, interestingly enough, the head coach at Tulsa. Let's see who else. Other coaches in the American, Ken Niumatalolo is a voter as well. The head coach at Navy. Let's see here. I'm looking up and down, trying to see. Oh, Luke Fickell himself is a
lot of mid-major head coaches in the poll. So this is not like, hey, all the elite.
No, don't forget Saban is a voter too, though. As is Brian Harsin at Auburn, Clay Helton at USC. It goes on, right? So
a lot of coaches.
Brian Kelly, Notre Dame,
right? So. But here's the thing. And the reason, I think Brian has said this for years, and I agree with him. The polls don't matter because you got to still take care of business. Like Cincinnati, everybody keeps talking about how they have this great head start. If they lose to Indiana and Notre Dame, it doesn't matter. If they don't win the league, it doesn't matter. If UCF doesn't beat Boise State, it doesn't matter. You got to win games. And at the end of the day, look, the UCF Boise State winner of that game likely will get pushed to the top 25, if not close to it, with that win, and we'll build the momentum. You gotta, at the end of the day, we win games. There's gonna be teams that are ranked too high right now that at the end of the year we're gonna look like, wow, can you believe they were ranked in the top 10? What a joke. And then there's gonna be teams right now that are not ranked that probably have this great year. They're like, man, they surprise people. It's always how the sport works. People get caught up in it, and I get it, but it really doesn't matter, especially in this format where there's a committee that's going to have their own poll come out in Halloween or November.
Well, let me push back on that a little bit, because I know that the committee is not going to meet for the first couple of months for the CFP committee, but you can't deny that they look at the major polls, the coaches in the AP poll, and use that as a little bit of data in forming their own polls, right? Because obviously they work together so quickly or so closely. And with that, in that respect, this is a big boost for Cincinnati to be ranked that high in the poll, because let's say they win those 2 games. Let's say they're undefeated come November. Guess what? The committee is going to look at that and probably rank them, like you said, pretty high, I'm guessing.
Well, they would be ranked high even if they weren't. If they win those 2 games, the difference is.
I think if they lose even one of those 2 games, they're going to drop pretty quick.
Well, they're going to drop if they lose. I agree. But you said if they win those games, they would move up pretty high. I think they were going to move up regardless. But look, I mean, some people think that there's a ceiling, right? Like the people that say, well, they don't have a shot to make the playoff. So the odds are there's going to be a ceiling.
5.
Right, 5, 7 anyway. So again, this poll doesn't matter if you believe there's a ceiling. And if you don't believe there's a ceiling, then you have to let it play out. I just think it's going to be interesting to see what happens if they win those games against Indiana and Notre Dame. That's the type of schedule when people were critical of the UCF non-conference schedule back in 17 and 18, this is what they were talking about. There was no marquee non-conference game. And I know people want to point to the conference, and I'm not saying it's fair or whatever, but I do understand what the system is, and they've pretty much been clear about it. Play quality, top-notch non-conference games, and clearly the current athletic director agrees with that.
Well, let's be fair though. Pretty sure when Cincinnati scheduled Indiana, they weren't thinking that Indiana.
Oh, it's a lucky thing, right? It's a fluky thing. No, it's very fluky on this type of deal. That in theory. By the way, we don't know if Indiana's going to be that good either, right? Like, we're basing this ranking on Indiana having a 5-6 game format in the Big Ten last year, where it had COVID. I'm not sure Indiana's that good. I actually think Indiana might be one of those over. We'll find out. Tom Allen's done a good job there. But these are the games that I guarantee you when these games come up, Cincinnati's going to be a hot focus. And I do think the media likes Luke Fickell. I mean, Luke Fickell was a Buckeye. He was on the Ohio State staff, played at Ohio State. He's a popular coach. He's a big-name coach, and I think people like their style. And I do think they should be the favorites in the American. Do I think they're the 10th best team? Yeah, maybe they are, maybe they're not. I don't think, though, and you asked me this question last week. A lot of people took it out of context, my answer. I'm not saying you asked me about the gap between UCF and Cincinnati. I didn't say UCF was further behind Cincinnati. I think the gap is close. If you look at their meetings, it's been a one-possession game or two at best. I'm saying an SMU potentially, and I know when we had Drew, he likes Memphis. I think this league could beat each other up this year, which in essence could cost themselves a New Year's Six bowl. And I think that's a topic that has to be addressed if they do expand the playoff, Jeff. And I've got into this argument with Drew, does a one-loss American Conference champion or a two-loss American Conference champion jump an undefeated MAC team, for example, that goes undefeated, who didn't beat anybody, for example? See, and I think they should. I think the American is far superior to the MAC. But I'm not convinced of that, and I do think this is where the hypocrisy of the committee comes in, because I do feel like they just vote for the best record as far as the G5 is concerned. But
then, here's another. I mean, you mentioned the MAC, right? But you've told me many times you think that the MAC should be an FCS conference.
I do.
So let me ask you this. What if you have a one-loss American team against an undefeated Boise State?
Well, I think Boise State will get the nod because of their reputation. Now, who did Boise State beat?
Let's say another team from the Mountain West.
I think you got to look at
San Jose State or something like that.
Well, you got to look at the resume. But like, who's the one-loss American team? Is it Cincinnati? Did Cincinnati beat Notre Dame? Did they beat Indiana? Did UCF beat? I think 2016 was another year in that. Remember Navy that year had one loss going into the championship game. And there was talk within the committee that they were going to postpone their selection an extra week and wait till the Army-Navy game, because there was some talk that the one-loss Navy team would jump then undefeated Western Michigan. It never materialized because Navy was upset by Temple in the American Conference Championship game. But Navy had some quality wins that year. I believe even Notre Dame, they beat them that year, among others. I do wonder what happens there. Is the American, I think that's a great point you bring up. Has the perception of the American exploded to the point where they do get the benefit of the doubt? Does a one-loss American Conference champion get the benefit of the doubt over an undefeated Mountain West team that's not Boise State,
right,
or a Sun Belt team? I don't know about that. I don't know the answer to that. Obviously, Louisiana's ranked. Billy Napier and the Cajuns, if they have a monster year, I don't know if the American can jump them with just one loss, unless they have marquee wins out of the league. I think that's what it might come down to, and I think the schedule strength is a factor. I think that's why I hope when they do expand the playoff that they do not just base it on win-loss record, because I do think who you play should matter. You should encourage teams to play tough games. Otherwise, teams are just going to play a bunch of FCS schools and go undefeated if you're just going to reward win-losses.
But by the way, not just who you play, but I think that this also gets lost in is how you played them. Like if your one loss is on a field goal after a bad call on the road, for example, should you get a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt than that undefeated team?
That's a great point. Like if Cincinnati were to lose to Notre Dame in overtime on the road in South Bend, that's the only loss of the year. Are you really going to punish them for playing Notre Dame? Whereas I don't know, use an example.
By the way, a great point. Take them to overtime. Functionally, you played them to a draw.
Exactly. Right. Why should they be punished for losing that game and reward a team from another conference like the MAC, who in theory may not have played anybody out of the conference? And I'm not saying
team playing two FCS teams like
I think that
State or something.
I think to me that is something that doesn't get scrutinized enough when it comes to the when they pick the New Year's Six. Did they play teams now? And look, I'll be honest with you. I think Cincinnati kind of caught a break, and this is where the American did pay off. You could have made the argument last year, right? As weird as the year was, could you have not made the argument that Coastal Carolina had a better resume than Cincinnati? When you think back, Coastal Carolina beat the Cajuns, right? Beat BYU in that
BYU at home. And by the way, in an excellent football game, in a game where in a late season game that they scheduled late, where they had all the pressure on them.
Right. Whereas Cincinnati, their best wins was an SMU team that faded on the road, and at UCF, who had ended up with 4 losses, was not ranked, and Army was their top non-conference. Now, again, a lot of this was beyond their control. It was a COVID year. A lot of non-conferences were scrapped, so I'm not blaming any school, but from a resume standpoint, you could have made the argument that Coastal Carolina was undefeated, had a better resume than Cincinnati. But to your point, because Cincinnati was in the American, and I think a more prestigious league, they got the benefit of the doubt and got that New Year's Six slot.
You know what it is, Eric? It's that week after week American Athletic Conference grind.
That's right.
It's the weekly grind of playing in the American. That's what it's all about, right there.
And I think that's a positive. I think you should. You joke about
being
them.
Slightly facetious there.
Look. To your point. UCF has been ranked. SMU has been ranked. Cincinnati's been ranked. The Tulsa, right? Memphis SMU has been a primetime game a couple years back. This league has had multiple teams, and I predict they will likely have multiple teams again ranked at some point this season. The question is, is the league this year so good that it beats each other up? And if you drop a game, do you run the risk of losing? That's why I think Mike Oreska's been pushing for the American to have an automatic slot and not just be kind of paired up with the other conferences, because if you have a strong year and you lose a game or two and you win the league, you might get punished. And unlike the SEC is the one league that seems to be able to get away with a loss or two.
Although league where you get rewarded for a loss.
right, and probably will now with the expanding. All right, it's going to continue. But so I think those are some of the things to look at from a poll standpoint. And from the American storyline standpoint is from that standpoint. Because I think, like I said, I think SMU is going to be a threat to Cincinnati and UCF. Here's another scenario. What if Cincinnati, if you're a UCF fan, this is a great scenario, right? And if you're the American, this is the scenario you want. You want Cincinnati to beat Indiana and Notre Dame, and UCF to beat Boise State and beat Louisville. You could have at that point, I think you would have 2 highly ranked teams, probably in the top 15, probably with College Game Day at Nippert for UCF at Cincinnati in that scenario.
Would be huge. That would be absolutely huge.
That's what the league wants, and would be huge for everybody.
Yeah, and that game would be prime time, no doubt. No doubt. So, one other thing I wanted to talk about before we take a break and we go to Tiffany Roberts Sahaydak and talk a little women's soccer is, all right, the stadium thing. Everybody's on hold right. And by the way, one last thing. I know everyone's going to ask me, when's the AP Top 25 come out? The answer is August the 16th. That's a Monday at noon. Now, as far as the UCF stadium naming rights deal is going on. All right. So we and several other outlets have reported, and credit to Danny Medina, by the way, all over this story, that 3MG Roofing could very well and it's likely to be the next naming rights partner for UCF's football stadium, according to reporting. And also that was confirmed actually by the latest Board of Trustees agenda for a special meeting that was scheduled today, Wednesday, August the 11th. Of course, 3MG now, and according, it's right there, which you can read, or the agenda. The deal is supposed to be 12 years, $50 million which would start, and it would start September the 1st, the day before the opener. And the stadium would be called 3MG Stadium. Now, ostensibly, this was supposed to have been, I's dotted, T's crossed, and voted on by the Board of Trustees today, Wednesday, August the 11th, at a noon special meeting. However, that meeting was suspiciously postponed. And in fact, I'm looking at the Board of Trustees website right now. On their board meetings in 2021, now their previous meeting scheduled for July 22nd was a virtual meeting that was canceled. If you look at today's Board of Trustees meeting from 11 to 12 earlier today, it just says rescheduling now. The agenda, it does not appear there anymore. And the next scheduled meeting is set for August 19th from 8:30 to 11 at the Fairwinds Alumni Center on campus. So what do we know about what's going to happen with this? We have no idea. Obviously, I think a lot of UCF fans out there, rightfully so, are hoping and praying that the deal goes through. But we've been here before, Eric, where it seemed like all the I's were dotted and T's were crossed, and then the rug gets pulled out from underneath UCF. And I think a lot of fans are worried that the same thing might happen here. Are you as worried about this or no?
No, but I'm not as interested in the story. That it'll sort itself out. I'm going to call it the bounce house, and I think a lot of the majority of fans are going to call the stadium the bounce house. They're still going to play games there, whatever it's called.
I know you got to call it the bounce house, but some of us have jobs to do.
Oh, you're in a different situation. I understand if it affects you more and affects others. I'm not saying that. I just, who knows? I don't know. I can't worry about things you can't control, and they'll sort itself out. And hopefully they have a deal that it's in the best interest for the school and it works itself out. I mean, that's all. Until we get more information, there's not much else to add to it.
Yeah, I hope it does work out. I'm with you. I think that it's, I know a lot of fans are worried about this and the bitter taste from how the roofclaim.com deal fell through, which, that's neither here nor there at this point. I think that people kind of just want this, this deal to be done, and then that can be good for UCF. I mean, that's, let's face it, that's $20 million over 12 years. That's a lot of, that's a pretty good clip to,
it's good revenue. It's revenue. It is
naming rights, right?
It's very important. And, like I said, you're right. It's something that benefits a lot of parties. So hopefully it gets itself worked out before the start of the season, and UCF could benefit from that. So we'll just see what happens here. We'll see what plays out.
All right. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk women's soccer, our first preview of the 2021-2022 athletic season. Tiffany Roberts Sahaydak, the 99er head coach of UCF women's soccer, joins us to preview her team, talking about her ridiculous scheduling tactics and some of the players that she expects to really step up for her team this year as they prepare to be once again contend for the American Athletic Conference title. Stick around. Eric and I will be back in just a moment. It's the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Back after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We're starting, it's already happening, Eric. Starting our preseason previews this week. It's amazing how quickly the summer goes by when you're busy. And kicking it off, as usual, one of our all-time favorite interviews, one of our, of course, and she's the head women's soccer coach of UCF, Tiffany Roberts Sahaydak. Hey, Coach, how are you?
Hey, guys. Always fun coming on here and talking to you guys.
Good seeing you too. Practice is underway. You guys had your first exhibition already. It feels like everyone, like people finished moving in yet, and you guys are playing games already. What's the deal here?
It's always the deal. We're the ones that kick off campus, I guess, all in all. So we're gelling and we're getting to know each other again without so many restrictions. So it's been really nice just having meals together and getting to know a new team. I mean, every year it's a new team. So just getting to know a new team.
Can I ask you more about that too? Because last year, obviously the results weren't the way they were, but weren't the way you wanted, obviously. But, I don't think everyone fully appreciates how much of a challenge it was with COVID and the restrictions, and also playing in the spring, and how difficult it was for you to develop the team chemistry that you want to. Zoom calls only go so far, right? I mean, so how is it? Relief is it now that you're like, hey, we can all be in the same room together and actually be a team together?
Oh, it's absolutely a relief. I mean, last season was the most challenging, time that I've ever had as a coach, just for my own family, for so many reasons. So it is a huge relief to have some kind of normalcy. I know we're not totally out of the woods, but to have some kind of normalcy, just to have our meals together, at our nutrition center is a huge deal. Just that we get to see each other more often. Our meetings are in person. And obviously we were able to train last fall, but it was like your locker room was your car, so you just roll up to practice like old school club soccer practice. And there was no, professional vibe or anything. So now that they get the locker room and we have a new facility, there's just a really, everyone's very grateful, I would say, and very appreciative of what we've been missing. And that doesn't go unnoticed at all.
Having gone through that season on the field, and obviously the challenges off the field and the adversity even dealt with on the field, you and I talked during that season. I mean, there were matches, honestly, that you left. You probably, you outplayed the opponent, but didn't get the result you should have gotten. Can that all pay off here in the fall with getting that experience for some of the players that are coming back for this team in the fall?
That's the plan. I try to always take away lessons, when we don't do as well as we want to, or there's failure there. And so I see a lot of fire burning from these players, just like I said, just because they get to do things they didn't get to do, but also they know that, we didn't perform at our best last season too. And so I think putting all that together, and then in combination with a ridiculous schedule, ridiculous, awesome schedule, there's some crazy fires burning in their bellies right now. And they've been performing so far really well, and in this preseason. So I am very excited to see how things, play out.
What's it like having this season back in the fall after the spring? Because a couple of coaches I've talked to have said, they kind of like it because, the memory of last year is so fresh, but also there's the conditioning aspect to it. You don't have that spring to sort of get healthy if there were some lingering injuries or whatnot. So I know it's kind of but what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's kind of weird, but a lot of people too would say, oh, does it feel like it just comes so fast because you just went boom, boom, two semesters in a row? But not really. Like, I don't know. I think I have short-term memory or something. So I feel like I felt ready. I think the team feels ready. And even though it was technically shorter period, not competing than we normally do, I just think everyone was ready to get back to normalcy and have a real season, that feels normal. So, we had some injuries even in the spring. So, it's nice that for the most part, people have recovered, and the roster is looking pretty good right now. So it wasn't actually as weird as I thought it was going to be, jumping right back in from spring to fall.
You mentioned the roster. It's got to be one of your biggest rosters you've ever had, right? I mean, considering you have to play, the extra years and all the turnover from spring and new faces. Describe the roster you have, because you have new faces coming in here for the fall, but you have, new players from the spring and the returners. I mean, just kind of as you kind of make it mesh.
Yeah, first of all, I'm really excited about our returners because we essentially lost the season last year. And, but in this, when I tell you I take lessons from it, you know, say the players that are supposed to be seniors this year, like Kristen Scott, you know, Daria Rajai, Matu Kak, and even Dayana Martin, like that was a whole year that they got under their belt, that they've grown so much. It's so weird. We come in this fall and this group of veteran players now, they really look like veteran players and they are playing like veteran players, which really excites me. And I have to say, like last year, I didn't really feel that just because I think COVID knocked us down from their sophomore, you know, spring. So just having this time to train, I feel like we have more core of veterans now, which we haven't had for a few years. And this time that has gone by really has helped them. So we're going to be leaning on these veteran players this fall. In the past few years, I feel like we've been really needing to rely on some youngsters. And I kind of like this feeling of not having to do that this year. And then maybe that's why I feel pretty good, because the veterans are looking good.
Let's ask you again about those, because it's 6 seniors and 1 fifth year. I think Maddie Mernon is listed as officially as a 5th year. You had Deanna Martin scored 2 goals the other day in the exhibition. You know, it's who I see what you're saying about the seniors, where, you know, that leadership is there, and it looks like you have a bunch of players who are ready to make a leap. Like they hadn't quite made the leap yet, but they're ready now. So who among them are you looking to make the biggest leap out of them all?
Well, I think Dayana, because I think that she has kind of been under the radar and quite hasn't performed and done as well as she's wanted to in the past few years. I know when she first came in as a freshman, she actually was injured. So she had a setback right away from preseason. And then it's like we get our hopes up and she's all ready, and then, you know, things fizzle out. But this year, I'm telling you, I've never seen her this fit before. She took the summer very seriously. And again, I think COVID and last year had something to do with this. It was like, it's time to get real and serious. And, you know, she stayed on campus, and that's the first time she's done that. So I just think she's done all the work. And now what's really cool is that when you put in the work, you might see some results. And she's seeing that right now with her fitness, and then also just productivity, scoring a couple goals in the first inter squad. So she's someone who we're ready to see a big leap. You know, Kristen Scott didn't really play for us last year. She had some knee issues, and so she just decided, I mean, like I said, it was COVID, and she really stood out. But again, Caroline Delisle, our goalkeeper, you know, she's always been so steady for us. And so just to have another year under her belt. So we just, you know, there's a handful, you know, our center back situation. We have a Canadian player, Ariel Young. She's been on our roster for a few years. She's been injured for a few years, and she's finally coming back. And she, you know, she's like 6 foot. You know, she was supposed to be a star her freshman year. And again, she just hit this, you know, injury bug. So she might be back, and, you know, we're hoping she stays healthy, because she could be a huge improvement. Just a big personality for us in the back that we haven't seen.
Of course, obviously, as long as we've known you, you've been here. Defense has been a really big part of this program's success. Obviously, goalkeeping with Caroline, you mentioned, but also the back line. How do you feel about your defense here as you get set for the start of the season going in?
It like I said, with the addition of Ariel Young, that's been wonderful. Just to have some height, and she's played in the under-20 World Cup, so she already has a lot of experience at a very high level. And she, you know, playing next to Matu Kak from France, where, you know, they have a lot of respect for one another, and they're just gelling right now really well. And then we'll see, though, because we actually have some international players that are coming in. They're just not here yet, so they haven't been in preseason camp. And so it's hard for me to know exactly where they're going to fit in. But essentially, they are defenders. So we've got fullback, one, either one can play fullback position. One of them can be a center back. One of them can be a holding mid. So they're more defensive personalities. So we do need more depth in all those positions, which has been a struggle for us just because of injuries. But adding them to our roster here in the next few weeks, that's going to bring more depth, more competition. And I have no idea how it's all going to play out.
One thing we know that's played out is you and Coach, you do every year. We always talk with you about this.
You just cut out, so I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, sorry. We always talk with you about the schedule every year and how insane. I just want to read this off for the listeners so that they know exactly what we're dealing with here. Opening with Texas at home. You go to Florida, home for LSU, at Ohio State, home State, at Ole Miss, home for North Carolina, and then the conference schedule starts, and you play USF in the middle of the year, not the end of the year like you have traditionally. But they're ranked again this year. 3 of those non-conference teams are ranked. We probably may see more by the time the season actually starts. Good Lord, Coach, what are you doing to your players with this schedule?
Clearly, you missed the non-conference portion of the schedule in the spring. You decided to make up for it here in the fall, right, Coach?
That's what I'm saying. We didn't even get to play any out of conference, so we're going for it. I want to be one of the best teams in the country, and you can't say that without preparing yourself or putting yourself up against the best. So, to play Penn State and UNC in the same year, that's kind of ridiculous, but that's what we need to do. And if we want to win a conference championship again, we have to be prepared. And, I don't have much of an ego. I'd rather learn from these games, and you will grow immensely by playing the best teams in the country. And, our plan is to win. And if you don't, it's still a win for me because I know that we'll be stretched either way. And then that's just going to prepare us. So, the team's very excited. I mean, I showed them that schedule, obviously, last spring, at the end of last spring, because they needed to know what they were going to be preparing for coming in. And I think that's part of the fire that I was telling you about. They've been really excited about. I will tell you, it's probably the hardest schedule that we've ever put together. So when I probably put it together, I probably didn't know it was after COVID and all that. We do schedules a few years in advance, but hey, maybe it will work to our advantage. We'll see.
Yeah, 2 top 10 teams in the preseason poll. Penn State 10 could be the favorites in the Big Ten. And then North Carolina, obviously, is always special. We remember the great match we had with them in 2017, that memorable overtime win against them. A lot of history between these two programs. We had Michelle Akers on this show a year ago. She still looks at North Carolina as a rival. They ended her UCF career, so she's going to be paying attention. But that's obviously special. You played there. We're approaching the 40-year anniversary of these two programs playing for the national title. Always special. And I think it's something you missed in the spring. You mentioned that. You always love playing that tough non-conference schedule because you learn about your team as it goes, which you didn't have that luxury in the spring.
Yeah, no. I mean, we just jumped right into it, and there's no, wiggle room for any error, if you just go right into season without, non-conference. And so, if we get a couple losses and are out of conference against top opponents, that's never going to hurt you. So I'm not really worried about that. Honestly, the games we have to win the games we're supposed to win. And those are the games that I get more nervous about. Can't be having ties and losses to teams that we're not supposed to lose to. And then you just, hope that you prepare them enough and they're ready to go and we can get some wins against some top ranked opponents. I mean, that's always the plan, but we'll see. But I am excited because, like I said, I think we've got a core of veterans that are ready to go and are very excited. And with the addition with some, international players, we did have a couple really good freshmen from the U.S., some of the best freshmen we've ever recruited domestically. They've actually they're injured, so we won't have them for this fall. So that was kind of a big hit for us. Mia Asenio, she was the Gatorade Player of the Year for Florida. And Maria Treganson. They both played at Montverde together, so they were creating a really nice connection at Montverde in the midfield. But we lost both of them to ACLs this past spring, so that was a huge hit. I think this spring, thinking you were going to have them this fall, especially against this schedule that we're going to have. But again, that stuff happens. It's unfortunate. We'll have them, next fall, and they'll just be able to make an impact then. And I think a lot of our seniors are going to stay around for their COVID year. So it just keeps building, just a lot of excitement.
Yeah, that's the other thing that's probably in the back of your mind too, is roster management, because the echoes from the COVID year are going to keep going for another 4 years with everyone getting that extra year of eligibility. So when you plan out your roster for the next 3 years, what sort of questions do you have to make about, who can fit into what slot and where?
Yeah, I mean, for me, we've taken our foot off the pedal as far as some of the recruiting, especially for the 2022 graduating class, because that means my seniors this year would take another year, which means I wouldn't have as much budget in my scholarship, to offer to those rising, seniors that year. So we've really had to project, what players that have been here, veteran players that can really help us another year. Because for me, I'd much rather take a veteran player that I know that has been with me for 4 or 5 years than a freshman who just hasn't competed at this level yet, So we just won't have these big recruiting classes probably for the next few years.
Gotcha. All right. Well, it's a huge challenge that all of you, everyone in every sport is dealing with, and I think it depending on how the roster was shaken out before COVID, it's such a tremendous challenge. I don't envy you guys having to make that balance. It's hard. Go ahead, Eric. You had one more question.
Yeah, I got a couple more rosters. People always ask, always excited Knight fans about some maybe new faces, new names that people should be on the lookout for this season that could make an impact on the pitch there. Who's some names to keep an eye on once the season gets going, especially up front? Yeah,
besides the two that I mentioned, who won't be with us, that's originally who I would have told you about. But we have a couple international players coming in. Like I said, we've got Saga Jontop from Sweden. And we have Marta Estupinan from Spain. She's a transfer. Actually, she was already here in the U.S. Saga's been trying to come here for over a year, but because of COVID, she couldn't get her visa. So she's finally arriving on Friday, which is just crazy because it's just been so long. But I think those are two players that probably you'll hear of. We had a transfer, Kara Young, so another last name of Young, that will be, having some time with us. And, right now she's playing a little bit in the back for us, but I'm going to expect that she'll be playing more of an attacking role for us once we get all of our players here.
This class has been well taught. You mentioned some of the highlights of your class. The national sites that cover recruiting said this might be maybe your best recruiting class, which is kind of a bold statement considering some of the classes you've had here. They got to prove it on the field, obviously. But what does that speak to the fact, not just this year, but the future of this program, getting this heralded class coming in? And you mentioned some of the facility upgrades you guys are having as well that's going to help you recruiting moving forward as well.
Yeah, I mean, UCF is an exciting place, and it's easy to recruit to. I mean, it's in Orlando. Think about international players wanting to, student athletes that say, Orlando, yes, how quickly can I get there? It's where everyone vacations. And that's where a lot of the country feels that way about Orlando and UCF and our brand and how big it's gotten, and people believe in it. And, having Terry and a new athletic director, he's super exciting and really fun and very passionate. And he's creating this jobs program for our student athletes to where they are all, guaranteed a job when they graduate. I mean, all these things when you're recruiting and you can share this with families, it's very attractive. So not just, you have obviously the UCF, an amazing university, but then the programs that we're offering, and then the location, and then, like I said, all the new facilities surrounded by palm trees and sun. I mean, to me, it's full package. Tim and I love it here. So we're going to try and be here forever.
None of us would mind that one bit. Like that.
This is a place to be.
Well, one player that we don't mind also being here a while is Caroline Delisle. We've talked about her in the past, a great tradition of goalkeeping in this program. She's among there. What have you seen from her? What can we expect from her? I know when we spoke in the spring, you said she was more of a vocal leader because she had such a young team in front of her. Now, what do you see from her here this fall?
Yeah, she's really she's a captain. She's one of our captains with Madison Vernon, and she has stepped up to be more vocal. Madison's not like super vocal. So she likes that side. She's very motivational, I think, to her teammates. And but she does still lead by example. I mean, the way that she trains and the saves that she makes at training, I mean, she gets everybody hyped up. I always yell, I'm glad she's on our team, glad we're not going up against her. So just to think because of COVID, and then she also, redshirt because her freshman year, she was behind Vera Veras and Chloe. So she had like two, professionals starting in front of her when she came in. So just that year of experience underneath real veteran goalkeepers. I mean, she's just layering on all the experience and all the knowledge. And now she's in that place. And I want to say she has like 3 more years of eligibility. It's something crazy. It's like a big joke. We're like, Carol, like, can you please, daily, I'm like, you're committing to these 3 years, right? Because I would really love to have a 26-year-old. I don't know how old she'll be, but, because of COVID and her red shirt, we're going to have her for a few years, and she's already playing like a veteran.
Not a bad problem to have, especially in that position. So, all right. Well, Tiffany Roberts Sahaydak, you're at TR Sahaydak on Twitter and UCF_W Soccer on Twitter as well. And there's one more thing I wanted to bring up too. The new supporters group that actually UCF just announced that third. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what you hope to see from the fans this year as well?
Yeah, I mean, I hope we get a lot of support and people to sign up and get that going again. Like I said, we're trying to have some normalcy here, and we're going to have 100% capacity at our games. As of today, things could always change. But we have a great schedule. So how can people not want to come out and get excited and so hopefully the supporters group will just be, coming out and bringing their vibes and their passion and create like a soccer experience. When you go to Orlando Pride games, and they're so fun, and just going to soccer games in general. Orlando's a soccer city. The best teams in the world come to Orlando to play games. So why not be able to bring that same type of atmosphere, to the UCF, soccer complex for the women and the men at UCF. So we're hoping to, gather all that support and create a really, really fun atmosphere for obviously the fans, but then also the players that are working so hard on field.
Pretty good year. Pretty good year to have a home schedule like you did there for it to come out. I mean, Carolina, Texas, Penn State, Memphis, South Florida. This is the year where you get to host them, and they've been tremendous as well. That's a pretty attractive home schedule. I mean, that's pretty appealing. Yeah,
for sure. There's no excuse.
Right. Exactly. There's no breaks on this schedule, especially at home. So August 19th, that's a Thursday, 6 p.m. Most, if not all, of the UCF women's soccer games will be viewable on ESPN. All the home games will. To be honest, probably quite a few of the road games, though we're not 100% sure yet on some of them, since the other schools are still working out their streaming schedules. But I think that's also a huge boost of seeing all these games on TV, on the mobile devices. It's good to see you out there, Coach. It's good to see your team all the time, and it's good to see a full schedule of UCF women's soccer once again this year. So thanks for taking the time for us. We really appreciate it, as always. Good luck, and we'll see you for the Texas opener on August 19th. What do you say?
Thanks, guys. Always fun chatting with you. Thanks for your support.
Thanks, as always, to Tiffany Roberts Sahaydak. Again, one of our, we're not afraid to admit that we fanboy out about the fact that she's still a 99er, and she always will be. And we're thankful for her time because she's such a great interview, and just excellent to talk to. Going back to last year, Eric, it was uncharacteristic how much this team struggled, but I think, Tiff hit it right on the head that, they couldn't, to her, the idea of building chemistry is so important. And I think that does go back very, quite obviously to her days not just at North Carolina, but with Team USA. And, having a lot of players on there who are veterans and trying to pull them together, and that pulls the younger players along. And it was really tough for that team to get themselves together. They won their first 2, and then they went winless in their last 5. And that was tough. That's a tough pill to swallow, especially after it looked like, they were in pretty good shape. They won that game at Temple, went home against Cincinnati, and just sort of the bottom fell out. Lost that high scoring game against Tulsa, and they just never really recovered after that. And it's, but I suspect, as I'm guessing you do, that both she and the team view last year as an anomaly, and that they are fully prepared for this season.
Well, you hope so, and I think you hope you get some. They have a deeper team, although she mentioned some of the injuries they've had, but they have some players coming back. I mean, she mentioned obviously Kristen Scott back. I mean, to me, it's going to come down to that veterans that she feels comfortable with, that experience. Does that pay off now moving forward for them? Look, Memphis and South Florida have been the top 2 teams now for the last couple of years. Can UCF kind of get to that level again? You got Kristen Scott back. You got Ellie, Moreno back. You got Merton back. Obviously, Diana Martin. Can they get that production offensively that they've kind of been lacking a little bit? Be strong defensively. Caroline Delisle behind the net. The big benefit is she'll have a big-time non-conference schedule, so she'll learn a lot about her team quickly here. I mean, you're opening with Texas at home, at Florida, post-Becky Burley era. Becky Burley now the new head coach, by the way, the pride of the NWSL. They host LSU, at Ohio State, host Penn State, which is a top 10 team in the favorites to win the Big Ten. You go to Ole Miss. North Carolina's ranked 3rd. They're a national title contender. So that is an incredible night. The RPI will not be an issue, or the schedule strength this year.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
And I think you mentioned it during the interview. The interesting thing is they host South Florida and Memphis. South Florida is earlier in the year, not the end of the year, which is kind of different from that standpoint for them. So hopefully they can kind of get some good mojo. The spring obviously didn't go as planned. A lot of stuff, but again, they didn't have players that they do have now in the fall, and I do think there's something to be said for that. And hopefully they can get some results early to build up that confidence, and we'll learn a lot about this team early on, that's for sure.
I'm really looking forward to seeing Diana Martin. I mean, she looked so good in that preseason game, and I think that was a harbinger of things to come. I think the teams last year really lacked a true scoring threat, and I think that's what kind of hurt. Like there was no striker that they could really count on to get one when they needed, and Diana really showed some signs. And I know it's an exhibition in one half. I get it, but Tiff did mention specifically that she expects big things from Diana this year. And I think she's right in line with that, because the talent is that we saw there, I think is just, she's ready to really burst onto the scene. I can't wait to see what she's got in store. 5'9" senior from Boca Raton. And look what she did against a team from Boca Raton, right? So, no joke as a player from South Florida in a real hotbed for soccer, women's soccer down in South Florida. She was the Palm Beach School District Player of the Year in 2017, Florida All-American nominee, and is ready to step up. And I think she's going to be exciting to watch. And I'm really looking forward to seeing Caroline Delisle too. Good as she's been the last couple of years, that she's, I think that she's going to be a real star in goal for UCF this year.
I would agree with that, and they got to be strong defensively, and hopefully, like I said, to get off to a good start, get some good results non-conference, and kind of get some confidence, that mojo going into conference play, and hopefully, again, this is usually the year you host Memphis and South Florida. Take advantage of that. The other thing that hurt them in the spring, obviously, is they had to go to USF, they had to go to Memphis with no, obviously, no non-conference. So this is usually the year when you host those two, you want to take advantage there to compete for the conference title and try to get back to the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2017.
Yeah. Got an exhibition Saturday in Coral Gables against Miami at 1 p.m. Season opener August 19th. That's a Thursday night, 6 p.m. against Texas. And that game will be televised on ESPN+. Don't forget they travel to Florida August the 26th, 1 week later at 7 p.m. before coming back home for LSU August 29th, which is their last game before the football home opener. All right, so We got women's soccer now. We got men's soccer coming up and volleyball coming up as well in the coming weeks as we get ready for the 2021-2022 spring season. We'll be previewing those on the site as well as we get that going here on Black and Gold Banneret. Stick around when we come back. A couple odds and ends, a little news and notes we want to get to you here as we wrap up the show. We'll be right back. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez with you. Let's give you some news and notes here as we wrap up this show here in early August. Little football note here I think is pretty cool. The Hula Bowl is coming to the Bounce House. Now, the Hula Bowl is a postseason all-star game. I remember watching the Hula Bowl in the 90s, Eric, when it was the first college all-star game I'd ever heard of because it was televised on NBC. And I'd even heard of that before the East-West Shrine game and all that kind of stuff. But the Hula Bowl, remember, they usually played it in Aloha Stadium in Hawaii, right? Hence the name Hula Bowl. And but as we know, Hawaii's had to demolish old Aloha Stadium because it's not safe to play in. The University of Hawaii is playing in a temporary stadium, a high school stadium elsewhere in Oahu, while a new Aloha Stadium is built in Honolulu. And so in the meantime, the Hula Bowl was looking for a home, and they decided on UCF. It'll be played at the Bounce House, not at the Citrus Bowl, at the Bounce House, January 15th, 2022, pending approval by the UCF Board of Trustees. And so, yeah, this is pretty cool. We're going to see another college all-star game here in Orlando. And this was a pretty significant one that Ricky Williams played in the Hula Bowl, Tony Dorsett, Billy Sims. We've had a lot of stars come through and through this, and it's a chance to see some more really good college football talent getting ready to head to the NFL this year.
Yeah, I think the interesting question, I got to believe that UCF can make some money out of this, right? Like there's got to be a motive behind hosting a game like this. You don't just host it for the sake of hosting.
I imagine at the very least, you're going to get the gate, you're going to get the parking,
right.
You're going to get all that kind of stuff.
You get that, obviously good from a recruiting standpoint as well, because obviously, you would have an all-star. I think it's an interesting deal. I will be interesting to see how that plays out, how much people draw into that. I know our boy Drew's fired up about it, so he's ready to go.
Excited. He was telling us on the group chat because he used to cover the what was it that was in Tampa?
The all-star game they had over there, in St. Pete.
I forget which one that they played in. The Under Armour game, wasn't it? No, that's the high school all-star game. But yeah, he says he wants dibs on the Hula Bowl. I'm like, go for it. January 15th. It's all yours. Some tennis. One more UCF football note to pass along to you. Eric, you were watching NXT last night. And
that would be Tuesday night for those on a USA.
Yes. And who happened to show up on screen?
Two UCF football alums, Parker Boudreaux and Cal Bloom. They did a segment to hype up a match between Kyle O'Reilly and Adam Cole, and they do this face-off. It's like a standoff, and of course they have security there because they're concerned about things could break out in a fight.
Kind of like the pre-fight press conference, like with the guy in MMA who always has to break people up and all that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I noticed, and you see, and I wrote about it on Black Gold Banneret. You can check it out right now. Parker Boudreaux is on the left side playing a security guy, and then on the far right, it's Cal Bloom. Yeah. The thing that was impressive to me about it, on social media, people notice Parker Boudreaux. Like casual fans are like, he's got
Parker Boudreaux alert.
He really has a fan base, which is kind of wild. It's not uncommon, by the way. People ask, this is kind of weird. What does that mean? Well, a lot of wrestlers a lot of times get used as, quote, security guys or extras, before they make it, debut. So, hey, you get TV airtime, hey, while you're training, you're developing, let's use you in this role, because we're not going to just use real security people, obviously. Yeah. So,
but the thing member of the cast, if you will.
Right. But the thing that stands out is that a lot of social media has been buzzing about Parker. I don't remember a prospect that has never had wrestling experience get this much buzz like Parker Boudreaux has really over the last year or two, starting back ever since he got compared to Brock Lesnar. The interesting thing about it that might be good news for him and even Cal is the WWE just released about 13 guys from NXT, and a lot of reports are that they're going in a different direction, that Vince McMahon wants to go younger and bigger, taller guys that are young. He doesn't want to go with older guys in their 30s that are not tall. Well, Parker Boudreaux's he's not small and he's not old. So I think that's good news for him as he develops. I think he could get you might see him on TV here sooner than later. Same with Cal Bloom. By the way, they're doing another face-off next week's show for the title. I believe it's Samoa Joe against Killian Cross. So they might need security there. So the guys could be back.
Security entourage for Cal Bloom and Parker Boudreaux, right?
But it's kind of funny. They were both in the same ring together. That's the first time. Think about it. They've never been in the ring, at least on TV, at the same time. Cal Bloom made his debut about a year ago on SmackDown, got squashed by Sheamus on SmackDown. But you got the two.
He fulfilled his duty in taking a beating for a while from a superstar, right?
Agreed. So hey, one step closer for both of those guys, and who knows? We might see them in the ring together again in a match, maybe together, maybe against each other.
We need Triple H to set it up. UCF against UCF. Cal Bloom, Parker Boudreaux in the ring. Let's sort this out. Come on, man.
I'm down for it. So we'll see what happens.
Hunter.
That's right. Make sure, give the boys the opportunity there. So we'll see. And Parker, you can tell Parker has the charisma on social media. He's already learned how to tease the everybody, just teasing everybody. He's got the wrestling persona.
It's kind of absurd at this point, by the way, like how much of a tease he's been on social media. It's crazy. Cal Bloom, interesting, doesn't really have overly much of a social media presence, but I think I was worried when I saw those layoffs that WWE was having. I was worried that Cal could get caught up in that, but I'm glad to know that he's not. So hey, the more UCF people we get to see, the better. Now at NXT, where are they filming that, by the way?
They're not at the Performance Center. They're performing it at the Capitol Arena here in Central Florida. I don't know where the Capitol Arena is.
Arena.
Yeah, that's what they're calling it, at least on TV.
Are you sure that's not what they call the Performance Center?
I don't think so, because
like
they were
venue inside the Performance Center.
I mean, unless it could be a different part of the venue. I'm not sure. We'll find out as they do more. They're doing all TV from there, basically. They're not traveling, unlike the other shows. It's kind of an interesting deal there. What they've got there and it's going to be back to more of a developmental. But I would assume it's at the Performance Center. Maybe it's in a different location from that standpoint. But we'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens there. Development. Hopefully, Parker Boudreaux. As long as we see him on TV.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that's So if they're putting you on TV, that's still a good sign. Security or not. All right. Some bad stuff to talk about. You broke some schedule news this week, Eric Lopez. Miami and Auburn on the non-conference slate for UCF basketball.
Yeah, I wrote about it, Black and Gold Banneret as well. The UCF basketball through other schools' sites. You talk about a tough non-conference schedule. We talked about that with Coach Sahaydak. Look at UCF men's basketball. They're going to go to Auburn December 1st. Auburn's a team that a lot of people believe could contend for the SEC title this year. They're top 15 in John Rothstein's top 44 poll. Then you got an announcement where UCF's going to Miami November 13th to play. They're going to host Oklahoma November 27th. This is a pretty impressive start to the schedule here from a non-conference standpoint for Johnny Dawkins and company. Plus, I remember Brian Murphy, our old buddy, reported this last year when Michigan UCF, remember, they scheduled that home and home where they played at Michigan. In theory, Michigan could be coming back to UCF. Now, we don't know that officially, but Michigan could be coming. So you could have UCF hosting Oklahoma and Michigan in the same year, unless they decided to push the Michigan game because of the whole reshuffling of the schedule. I don't know if that'll be the case, but my goodness, this could set up to be the most challenging, toughest, and yet exciting schedule in the history of UCF basketball.
Yeah, this is big. One other no, I mean, you mentioned the FSU game down at the BB
at the Orange Bowl Classic in December. Yep.
And then Jacksonville also appeared on the schedule for November the 16th. The Jacksonville Dolphins are let's see, Old Day Sun foe, right? And then we know the schedule pairings for the American side of the schedule, but that's just the pairings. We don't know the dates. So UCF's playing everybody twice. And the only teams they play once are Cincinnati, who they host, and SMU, who they travel to. So,
but think about it, Florida State's another team that's going to be a top 25 team. So you go down to Sunrise, you play Florida State in December, you're going to Miami to play Miami. I feel like that Miami game is a return game from a couple years ago when if you remember, UCF hosted Miami a couple years ago. There, and then obviously the Auburn game is the home and home. Last year UCF beat Auburn deal, but man, and then Oklahoma, remember they were supposed to host Oklahoma last year. That got postponed for COVID. That Oklahoma game is going to be the Saturday after Black Friday. So, but again, challenging non-conference schedule, very fitting for Johnny Dawkins. He's always scheduled very difficult. And, boy, he's off to a heck of a start. And who knows, Michigan could be a part of this, may not. Either way, a challenging schedule. And then, of course, you mentioned the American Conference slate. While we don't know the obviously the dates for that, we do know the opponents and who they play twice and who they won't. So, man, Johnny Dawkins ain't messing around.
Yeah. That's what's good to see. Again, we talked about it with Tiffany Roberts Sahaydak, right? It works for basketball, too. It's challenging, and it should be. And that's the only way to really figure out how you're going to, where your team is going to be, in terms of, what the quality is going to be going forward. So applause to Johnny. So we've got, another basketball to pass along. NBA Summer League. Aubrey Dawkins was a late ad, by the Washington Wizards. And he stepped in quite nicely, I thought, in his summer league debut on Wednesday, on Tuesday. 6.7 rebounds, 2 assists, but he was active on the boards, like we mentioned, but had looked like he expanded his game in terms of running the point. I thought he played really good defense. I was watching some of that game as well. Defense wasn't really known to be one of Aubrey's strong points when he was at UCF, but wow, I thought he performed really well defensively for the Wizards in what is Aubrey's second stint in the NBA Summer League. He's looking to latch on with somebody, and may as well be the folks at Washington, or hopefully he can get a job somewhere else. But did you catch any of the highlights from that game?
I didn't get a chance to. Been locked in on the Jalen Suggs era, the Magic there. But look,
boy, has that been exciting, by the way?
Yeah, he's been fantastic. I mean, he looks legit. I think Magic fans have somebody I think it's the first perimeter player the Magic have been excited about. Wow, maybe since Penny. If you think about it, I mean, Jameer was kind of a nice surprise. That was cool.
Victor Oladipo?
Were people excited when Vic they drafted? I guess they were. But I think Suggs is going to be better. We'll see. Find some shooters around him, though, please. That's still going to be an issue. But nonetheless, yeah, look, Aubrey's obviously an opportunity to showcase himself and trying to work himself into a league and work himself into a contract. I mean, Taco Fall is going to be a free agent, so it's about finding work, man. It's tough. I mean, the good news is they have a summer league. This is the showcase. This is where all the scouts, all the teams are going to be at. So if you stand out, you'll be noticed.
Yeah. I was just really encouraged to see Aubrey with the defense. Yeah, I just thought that he looked really active. He looked like a much different player than even what we saw at UCF, and I think that was what was a much improved player. I mean, we know obviously how explosive a scorer he can be, but let's face it, you make it to this level, even the NBA Summer League, everyone's an explosive scorer in college, right? It's what you do in the other parts of the game that matter. Are you a full player? And I think he's really developed himself.
Well, and then to develop a consistent shot outside, especially in the game today where perimeter shooting is paramount. It's very difficult to be in the league if you can't shoot.
Right. But he's shown he can shoot. So we'll see how that works out going forward for Aubrey, and we'll be monitoring him as UCF's or as his summer league week continues. One last story I wanted to talk about is men's tennis. Let's reach out some congratulations to Trey Hildebrand, the ITA National Summer Doubles champion. Now, the ITA, they host these tournaments all throughout the summer and the fall before the spring NCAA season fires up, and they have the spring spring tournament, or excuse me, summer tournament. And Trey matched up with Patrick Cacciatore, love that name, from the University of Nebraska. And they defeated Jared Pratt and Sebastian Weil, both of the University of Wisconsin. Sebastian Weil sounds like a comic book villain, by the way. In the men's doubles final in the ITA Summer National Championships on campus at Florida State. So congrats to Trey. You know, he's coming back this year. A reloaded UCF men's tennis team. And they're already bringing home hardware, Eric, and we haven't even really started the start of the fall yet. This is good to see.
Did you just say, though, a UCF player, Nebraska player, winning together, playing together?
Right.
What?
Yeah.
No way.
I know. Weird.
How about that?
Weird.
No, look, Trey is a great doubles player and a singles player. Remember last fall, he won the singles tournament as well. So obviously, Trey, All-American doubles player, is going to have another monster year. UCF will be loaded once again. They'll be ranked. They'll be content favorites to win the league. And obviously, I think still with some unfinished business probably internally there. They feel they can make now that they've been to host a tournament, they won a tournament match. Now it's about getting further, and I think it's just continues to grow.
That's the part I like the most, is the fact that they're coming into this season with a little bit of a sour taste in their mouth, a little bit after the way everything ended last year. I think they're going to be a lot of fun to watch this year. So hopefully we'll get the chance to talk to John Roddick soon, probably closer to the spring as the spring season gets ready to fire up. Although his team is obviously going to have a busy schedule in the fall as well, as will the women's team as well. So that's going to wrap it for us here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast, Eric. Wow, we're going to be moving along with our previews in the for the fall sports. We got volleyball coming up. We got men's soccer coming up. We're going to be dumping a lot of content out for football that we've been saving up for a while. Position previews, 5 biggest questions facing UCF football that we do every year. This is going to be a busy time here coming up for us here in the month of August, as we're just, the 11th will give us 21 days until UCF and Boise State. 21 days. Here we go, man. It's happening.
It's going to be wild. Looking forward to it, and kind of wild to see the fall sports back in the fall.
I know.
And you just saw them in the spring with so many storylines. So many. Let me ask, what is your biggest storyline, non-football? Because obviously Gus is the big storyline. Football obviously is always the big story. But put that aside. Put the basketball. You look at men's soccer, women's soccer, volleyball. Which of those sports do you think is what's the most intriguing storyline you're looking forward to as we kind of start?
I'm always biased. You guys know me. I'm going to pick the volleyball storyline, and my storyline there is what does UCF could win 4 consecutive conference championships this year, but it's going to be as tough a road as they've ever had in order to do it, because there's no conference tournament. Which by the way, if there was one, they would be hosting this year. But no conference tournament this year, all regular season, a brutal non-conference schedule. Can they pull it off? Can they pull off a four-peat in volleyball? Now, it's been done before, but it was done in the early 90s, and the first one was under Laura Smith. And the first one was at a time when if you won the conference, you didn't necessarily get a bid to the NCAA tournament. There wasn't an auto bid for the TAC at the time. Now UCF ended up winning the conference 4 straight years. They got into the NCAA tournament, which was 32 teams, I think, back then. The last 3. But this could be a chance for Todd Dagenet and McKenna Melville to make some huge history for UCF volleyball this year. That's my big storyline. What about you?
And then can they break through and get to the Sweet 16? No UCF team in Division I era has ever done that. McKenna chasing history, should be on the verge. 1,000 kills, 1,000 digs in her career. Only 6 UCF players have ever done that. among others. I think that's a good storyline. But how about men's soccer? Obviously, the remarkable spring, winning the championship, getting to the Sweet 16. They've won, 3 straight?
Yep.
Regular season titles, going for a 4th with a new goalkeeper. Yannick Ertl now playing professionally, signed with the Revolution. That's going to be weird not to see Yannick in the net. Who steps in those shoes for UCF? He was he was the star of the team this past spring. Now who steps over? I think that's a big storyline. The men's side, I think your volleyball, you've hit it. And we've addressed the women's soccer. Can they get back? I mean, who would have thought right now you got men's soccer winning championships, women's soccer trying to get to that level. So fascinating storylines this fall. It to me is who replaces Yannick in the net, and can UCF still win the title without with a new goalkeeper? It's going to be very interesting.
And we'll be following all those storylines with you all the way through. So once again, don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on Twitter at UCF_Banneret. I'm at Jeff_Sharon. Eric is at Eric Lopez Elo. You can follow all the rest of us as well at Black and Gold Banneret. We have our Twitter list in the masthead. Make sure you check that out and follow us all for the latest news on everything UCF sports. In addition to that, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast if you don't already. If you listen to your podcast on Apple devices, we are on Apple Podcasts. If you listen on Android devices, you can download them wherever you get your podcast, be it Spotify or what have you. If you do listen to our podcast and you do subscribe, we thank you so much. We appreciate it. Make sure you leave us a comment and a rating on our pages on wherever you get your podcast from. If you don't subscribe, well, obviously you know where to subscribe to us. But in addition, tell your friends about us. We are the longest running continuous UCF podcast on the internet, and we're really proud of that. So don't be afraid to tell your UCF friends all about us, because we try to provide as full a picture of UCF sports as we possibly can, week in and week out. So once again, for Eric Lopez, I'm Jeff Sharon. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We'll catch you next week.